the mic.
I am now.
Okay. Um, it's obviously muted. Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Ed Wilson, and I am the Microsoft scripting guy. And so today I'm going to talk about scripting PowerShell best practices. I know the invite said write modules, not scripts, but this is actually a presentation at the PowerShell Summit, so I thought that it would be kind of fun to do this instead. Then when I'm done, then I'm going to turn the headset over to Teresa, the scripting wife, who is a new PowerShell MVP, and I think that her and Matt are going to have a conversation about the importance of community contributions and stuff. So, scripting PowerShell best practices. The thing to keep in mind is that there is a difference between a best practice that one might have when one is working interactively from the command line, so the PowerShell prompt, as opposed to working in writing a script. And so first thing that you really need to do, is that when you decide that you're going to write a script, then you need to know, the key point is to know what you're doing. Now, I don't mean just know what you're doing about writing a script, but rather the key is to know what is the point of the script. Now, if the script is going to be something that you're going to use over and over and over again, where the script actually becomes something more like an application. I've known people that have done this. They wrote troubleshooting scripts that they gave to the help desk, and the help desk has to run quite often they put a graphical interface on the front end. And the help desk uses these for troubleshooting or diagnosing problems. Now those are more like applications, and so you need to do a whole lot of work in that, to make sure that the code is reusable, to make sure that the code is well documented and all of that. But if you're just writing a script that you're going to use maybe one time, then it does not make sense to spend a whole lot of time trying to write reusable code. And when I say reusable code, I mean writing functions, advanced modules. If you're only going to use it once, then you're really only looking for something that's maybe just a little bit more complex than what you would type at the PowerShell console. And so this is something that people at times get confused about. They see a lot of these blog posts written by people, and they say, well, you never use an alias in a script. You always put it into a function. You always have to do comment-based help. You always need to put your functions into a module. And those might sound like good ideas, but then a lot of people, they see all of this, and they look at at 150 lines of code, and all it does is return the serial number for the BIOS, and they go, dude, this is stupid. People complained about VB script. Where do they get a load of this crap? And so that is not the point, okay? So the point is, what you're doing. If you're doing a simple task that's only going to be done, maybe once or twice, then write a simple script. If you're going to be doing something that's going to be much more complicated, something that's going to be used more often, then that's, and you add in your comment-based help, you could put in your functions and your advanced functions and all of this. So one of the key points out here on this particular slide, is that the fourth point, it is a mistake to spend hours doing something to make it to make your code reusable if the code is a one-off. It is code that you're only going to use one time. Okay, so that's so an overview of PowerShell best practices, scripting best practices. This is a key decision point right here. Is going to reuse this code? Am I going to use it more than once? Am I going to use it many times? If that's the case, then you need to take the time and write some really, really good code. If it's something that's only going to be used once or twice, then don't waste all your time writing something that's really complicated when something simple will do. The second key point that I want to stress is that your code should be readable. Okay? Now, if you can read and understand your code, then you will simplify the troubleshooting scenario if you ever get to the point where you have to troubleshoot. Okay. One of the things is I mentioned this in PowerShell last week, and it's like every time I'm asked to help somebody with their script, so somebody sends a script, I'm working on this a week and a half and it's not doing what I want it to do. It seems like the first thing that I wind up having to do is that I wind up having to spend a lot of time reformatting so that I can understand the code. This is something I'm not sure exactly if there's a direct correlation, but it's like people that write that you can't read and understand also have a tendency to write code that doesn't work properly. And so this goes back to this readability thing. Now, along with writing code that you can read, there are a number of things that you need that I think that you should do. You should line up a corresponding element in your code. So, for instance, if you have a for each, then you should line up your elements. If you have else and an else if, then the then the if, the else, and the else if, they should be lined up. They should be in the same column, so that when I look down through, you can see these. Your braces, your without errors, that does not mean that that script does exactly what you think it does. So using the debugger is one way you can actually figure out what your script is actually doing, the way you can figure out what's actually going on. And so because you could have variables that are picking up values that you might not be aware of. You could have functions that are calling other functions that are calling other functions. You might have variables that are scoped in some of those things as public, and so that those variables, you run the script, you don't see any errors, but you may be changing things that you don't realize that you're actually changing. You might be setting stuff and not setting it back. And so this is really, really important to learn how to use the debugger. And you use this for unit testing on your script, so that as you're going through this, you're making sure that your script is actually doing what you want it to do. Now, as we all know, there are two types of errors that you can have in a script, or you have in programming. You have actual errors, physical errors, if you will, and then you have logic errors. And these logic errors don't show up until you actually start to check the results. And so using the debugger can help you hook up a microscope into your script to really see what it's actually doing. One of the in the first VB script book that I wrote, Windows the Windows Scripting Self-Paced Learning Guidebook. I wrote it a long, long time ago from Microsoft Press. In that book, I actually have a script, and it has a logic error in it. And so the script is designed to show the status of all of the services that were defined on your system. I mean, it's just using a Win32_service. It wasn't anything that was like really fancy, and the script ran just fine. The problem was that there was a logic error in it, because there are two properties on Win32_service. One property is state, and the other property is status. And it's been a long time since I've written that book, but I believe that status returns OK or degraded, and it is state that returns running, stopped, or paused. And so in my script, I returned status because, hey, I want to know the status of these services. And so when you run the script, it comes back and it says OK or degraded, which, I'm not sure, what it means when a service is OK. Actually, I do. But if a service is OK, that doesn't tell me if it's running or if it's stopped or if it's paused. So that was a logic error. It was actually kind of embarrassing when I figured it out. Interestingly enough, nobody ever wrote me and said, hey, dude, this script is bogus, man. It doesn't tell me if a service is running or stopped. It just says, hey, I'm okay. And that's cool. I mean, we want our services to be okay. We want them to be mellow. We don't want them to be all stressed out or anything like that. But using a debugger, this allows me to dial into this stuff. It allows you to dial into this stuff and to actually see what's going on. Yeah, and thank you, Matt. So nobody's willing to correct you. So either that or it just means that nobody was bothering to read my book. Or they didn't read it closely. I mean, I read it, but I didn't catch it. So it was like for all of the scripts for that book, for that particular book, to give you just a little bit more on it. There was like over 500 or 600 scripts in that book, and so what I actually did is I wrote a script that was a test harness, and it went through and it ran every single script, and I looked for errors. That's how I tested my script. So that was my unit testing. But and so the script ran fine, but I realized I was only testing for one kind of error, the physical errors. And so if a script ran, with no errors, then that was fine. But that was for my final pass. If I had actually gotten somebody to run every single one of the scripts and physically looked at them and analyzed them, then we would have picked up the error in that script, in that particular script. Okay, write functions. Okay, so so if you're writing a script and you're going to use it, more than one time, or sometimes I write functions even if I'm going to use that script only one time because it makes it easier for me. What do I mean? Well, if I have a bunch of functions in my script, it actually makes it easier for me to test my code. Because suppose I've got a script and it's made up of 100 lines of code. And so I have a straight inline script, and it starts at line 1 and the script completes at line 100. That means that if I'm going to test this script, I have to check all 100 lines of code at exactly the same time. And so that makes for a bigger test surface. It makes for a more complicated series of tests and stuff that I'm going to have to do. But if that script does 4 things, and I break those 4 things up into 4 separate functions, then now all I have to do is test a 25-line function. And once I do that, then I can test another 25-line function. And I've done that, then I test another 20.
Possibly a problem today. Oh, everybody.
Okay, can anybody hear me? Link died on me. Yes, you can hear me. Okay, good. Okay, so I was talking about functions. Let me try to share my. Okay, Matt, you're gonna need to make me a presenter again. Present my PowerShell presentation. I'm presenting scripting best practices. Okay, let me know when you can see the slide. Okay, so okay, you can see it. Okay, good. So you want to write functions, and because it makes testing your script a lot easier to do. And so the other thing that I've found that works out really well is that, so I open up my script in the PowerShell ISE and I run the script, and now I've actually loaded all 4 functions into memory. And so then I can test each unit, each function as a unit, and look at the values. I can hook my debugger up to it if I want to, and I can see how they work. Now, what are some best practices for writing functions? Well, one of the things you want to do is you want to try to use like an advanced function. And the nice thing about this is they're not that hard to do. And I would actually try to open up the ISE and share it, but Link is acting so flaky. I don't want to risk that. So I'm just going to stay with hopefully sharing my PowerShell slide deck. But in PowerShell 3, we added support for PowerShell snippets. And so you open up the PowerShell ISE, and all you have to do is you click on Start Snippets. And then at that point, they will show the snippets. And there is an advanced function snippet. So you choose that, and that puts the outline of an entire advanced function at your insertion point on your, on the ISE, on your script. And when you do this, it adds in help, it adds in commandlet binding, it adds in your parameters, it adds your parameter declarations, you get a little bit for parameter validation and all of that. And so that is essentially your complete advanced function. There's also a cheaper version of it, if you will, a smaller version that doesn't have all of that, and you can use this. Now, when you write a function, or when I write a function rather, I like to write a function that does one thing, and it does it well. I like to have one way into the function, and I like to have one way out of the function. If you do this, it's going to simplify troubleshooting. It'll help you to avoid logic errors, and it also makes for a good user experience because you accept pipelining to it. You want to add your comment-based help, and all of that. Now, your function should return an object, and you don't want to return strings. So you don't want to have your function, that picks up a lot of information, and then you use write host, from inside the function. Nobody will ever see that. Except it's just going to pop up on the screen. Matter of fact, you can't even redirect it to a text file because write host doesn't go to text files. So you might say, okay, well, I'll use, out default instead. Yeah, and that'll send it down the pipeline, but you're still just doing text. So the easiest way to create an object is actually to use select object. And so where you were using, write host, just change that to select object. And now you've got an object that has that property and the value, and it's really easy. And then once you do that, then your function is then going to act like a commandlet. I can pipe stuff into it. I can pipe stuff out of it. It promotes reusability, simplifies your development process. Now, if you think about this for just a second, so all you need to do is to train your staff how to do grouping, sorting, and formatting output with PowerShell. That's all you really need to do. Then they can figure out how to, run a commandlet, and then they can pipe it to grouping, sorting, and formatting output. Those are standard tasks. So if you don't teach them this, then somebody says, hey, I want you to write a script. Okay, I can write a script. Okay, well, I need that script to output to a CSV file. Hey, no problem. I'll put a -CSV, and then I'll in my code I'll export it to to CSV. Okay, groovy. Well, then you give it to them, and then the next day somebody comes in and says, hey, I don't want a CSV. I want to write it to a text file. Okay, well, I'll go in and I'll add -text. And then I'll send it to out file. And then somebody else comes along and they say, I'd like to have an interactive grid that I could use. Okay, so then you go back in, modify the function again. Before you know it, you've got 25 or 30 switches, and all you're doing is formatting tables, formatting lists, sending stuff, to text files, to CSV files, to out grid view. and XML, and to all this silly stuff. And yet your code is getting really wonky and really complicated, and it's just a major pain. So if you return an object, and then you teach the staff to use the grouping, the sorting, and the formatting commandlets, then they can modify the output, or rather they can consume the data any way in which they want. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so once you've got your functions written, then the next thing that you want to do is you want to put these functions into a module. So for instance, I've written 25 or 30 scripts that go through and they parse email and data from Outlook. And one of these scripts was find appointments in 7 days. Another one was find emails sent in the last 7 days. And another one was similar stuff like this. And what I decided to do, and I used to write just basic one-off scripts for every task that I needed to do in Outlook. And but then one day it dawned on me. It's like, man, why don't I just return out, spend a little bit more time, write a function, and then I can use that function to return an object, and then I can get the information that I want. So I don't have to write a separate script to find important emails. I don't have to write a separate script that finds emails that are flagged for follow-up. I don't have to write a separate script that finds link meetings as opposed to in-person meetings or meetings that are in Charlotte. And all of those were essentially separate scripts that I'd written before. But if I return an object, then I can now do my sorting and grouping and filtering and have an infinite number of possibilities from that one function. Well, so I do a function for email, I do a function for appointments, I do a function for contacts, and do another function for tasks. And those are the 4 main things that I have in Outlook. I take those 4 things and put it into an Outlook module. Okay, and then all I need to do is to import those modules, and then I can turn around and write a very, very simple 2 or 3 line script that is based upon that module. Okay, so Matt wrote a question. It says, once you start sharing modules and scripts, you end up as the default support person for the code. Then you have to distribute updates and so forth. Is there any guidance on how to handle these requirements? Just sharing something usually ends up with a support workload you weren't ready for. I'm laughing, Matt, because I've been there, done that. So you do. And the other thing is at Microsoft, I've actually found some. We had an internal script repository for a while, and it was really, really funny. You go into this internal script repository, and you'd see some really cool scripts, but there was no contact information. There was no author information. All it was a script. And, so they shared it, but they put no contact information on it because they didn't want to have to support it. So that's not that's the best way. I'm not sure that's the best way, but that is definitely one way to do it. Is that, hey, I don't mind sharing this code, but it's not support. And I'm also laughing because if you go to the TechNet script repository, every single script on there, it has there's 50 million disclaimers everywhere that says, the code here is not supported, it's not supported, it's not supported, it's not supported. So what happens? People send email to scripter@microsoft.com asking for, oh, I'm not asking for support, I just want you to help me modify this script, or, it's not working for me, can you help me fix it? That's not support, is it? Yeah, so yeah, that's always an issue. Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. You can put disclaimers all over it, decorate it all you want, and say, hey, this isn't, this isn't supported. It's not supported. It's not supported. But yeah, if you absolutely positively don't want people to bug you, then absolutely positively, leave your contact information off of it. Um, and that's kind of a shame. Um, now, but it really gets to the point. So if you are truly sharing it, with maybe somebody outside the org, then you maybe really don't want support, to have to support it, and that's cool. If you're supporting it, sharing it internally, then you have to. Probably the best thing you need to do is to go and talk to your manager. And if your manager wants you to write code, then you need to make it clear to your manager that, okay, I'm going to write this code, put it in a script, put it in a module, and then you've got to make provisions, for me to have time to support this. Okay, or else you need to back me up, when I tell people to go jump in a lake. Because that is not supported. So it really depends on if the purpose of the writing and the sharing is for educational purposes, for production purposes, or something like that. There's not any hard and fast rules, unfortunately. It really comes down to having an understanding manager, who's going to realize that writing code, involves support. One of the interesting things that Jeffrey Snover said at the PowerShell Summit, and this is something that I didn't know. He said, you would be surprised at all of the the really cool stuff that people have written, but it didn't pass test. So, and we have a requirement. We can't release any code, unless it gets approved by test and legal and everybody else, And the reason it's got to go through and be approved by test is for supportability reasons. So our cost, with Windows, is, I don't know, 10 or 15, and I'm just making this up, so I'm not going to say that. But with a lot of software, the cost of developing the software is maybe 25% of the budget. 75% of the budget turns around for supporting that software afterwards, and that is really, really important. I'll tell you a funny story. I think it's kind of funny. My dad asked me one time to build him a computer. And he said, "Oh, you built dozens of computers for yourself. Why don't you build me a computer?" And I just looked him straight in the eye and I said, "Because, Dad, I don't want to support it." And he says, "What does that mean?" And I said, "Well, what do you think it means, Dad?" I said, I might be able to find 8 or 10 hours to build a computer for you, but it's going to take me a lot longer than that, because you're going to call up with questions about how to use the computer. And I don't have all of that extra time for it. So why don't you just buy something from a company that has a really good support policy? And I gave him some recommendations. And I said, just go and buy one of those. That way they'll have people who are professionals at helping you whenever you run into a problem with your computer. And so yeah, he didn't act like he really liked the idea, but yeah, he understood. Yeah, and that's the whole thing, is that you've got to start to begin to think about support and maintenance. And this is also another thing that goes back to with our PowerShell best practices part. If you write code that is easy to read and easy to understand, then it'll be easier to maintain as well and easier to support. If that becomes part of part of your strategy. And so you put functions into modules. And now one of the things that you can do, and so Matt was talking about updating the scripts. Well, if you put your modules in a centralized location, and a lot of people nowadays are actually putting their modules on OneDrive, believe it or not, so then whenever you log on, if you've mapped your module directory to your OneDrive or your network share, then whenever you have you want to update your module, you just update it in that one location. And then all the computers, will get that. Well, this is the same thing for your network. You may have a module that you've written, and you've got 100 net admins are going to be using that module. Then they can just get it from that one repository or that share. The next step, would be to put your module in something like GitHub or something like that. There are lots of ways to do that, which is beyond the scope of this. But you can actually get packages that would make it simplify installing the modules, and then you can update them and all of that. The thing about modules is modules make it very, very easy for you to share the code, for you to be able to reuse your code. And that's actually kind of where we're going to when we look at it with all of this stuff. So one of the last things I want to say is it's important to use the appropriate technology. And on this slide that I'm showing right now, I've got some stuff there. It says it's a mistake to use a command line utility if COM is available. And the reason is that command line utilities always return text. So like netsh, ping from a command line, those type of things. Those return text. COM, however, is going to return an object. So if you've got a COM interface, then you probably want to use that. It's a mistake to use COM interfaces if a .NET class is available. And the reason is because COM is messy. .NET has to wrap that COM class in order to be able to call it. It's generally 85-90% a pretty good wrap. .NET framework does not know how to manage COM properly, and so you wind up with memory leaks unless you explicitly go in and try to release these objects and dispose of them properly. .NET, it's managed code. PowerShell is built on .NET, so .NET and PowerShell are very, very on the same line, on the same mind set, and so PowerShell does .NET very, very, very well. On the other hand, it's a mistake to use a .NET class if a commandlet is available. And let me give you an example of this, because I see this a lot, where people will just, they kind of like avoid using a PowerShell commandlet, because, they'll just do it in .NET. And it gets to be silly. I mean, how many times have you seen somebody, do square bracket, date time, close the square bracket, colon, now, to get the current date time object. And that's like silly. I mean, that's what getDate does. So you should always go PowerShell, because dude, you're doing PowerShell. So you should use PowerShell unless there is a very specific reason for using or for doing something else. In my PowerShell Best Practices book, I talk a little bit about reading files. If you use get content, that's really easy. But it's also just a little slow. If you create the file system object that you might have used in VBScript, that is very, very, very fast. So if you got a several million line file that needs to be read, like some kind of a IIS audit log or something, then you may want to just simply go to the extra trouble of using the file system object because of performance reasons. So there's a specific reason of why you might go and do something else. But if performance is not a major issue, or it's not even something that's a problem because you're reading small files, then obviously use get content, because that is PowerShell. It's really easy to do and easy to use. It's a mistake to do more work than you have to in order to get the job done. And, that sounds like it's kind of obvious, but I have seen so many scripts from so many people who were putting so much extra crap in there that didn't need to be in the script at all, and it was just, I don't know, force of habit from, VB script days, or, from when they were writing, something else, but don't put a whole lot of stuff in there if you don't need to. I mean, I have actually seen PowerShell scripts where somebody is reading the WMI class, and then they turn around and they get the WMI class and they use write host to print out every single property from that WMI class. And that's like you did in VB script days. In PowerShell, you don't have to do that. If you want to see everything that WMI class exposes, you just use get WMI object or get sim instance and pipe it to format list with a star. And the dash force to make sure there's nothing hidden. That's it. I mean, it's a one-liner. But literally, I've seen some 25, 35, 45 line PowerShell scripts that were written exactly the way that you would have written in VB script. And it was just an absolute waste of time. And in the end, the result was actually worse than if they had just simply used, get WMI object and emitted the object. There's a question that says, do I think that long scripts are a trust issue? If you take the long way around with code, you can step through it easier and see more of what you're doing. So can you trust your code? I've never really thought of a long script as being a trust issue, other than the fact that maybe it's a little bit of prejudice on my part. But if I see somebody that's doing something really or what I would consider to be unnecessary in their PowerShell script, then I might not trust their script, because it doesn't show to me that they really know what they're doing. It's like they don't understand PowerShell if they're using write host to print out every single property from a WMI class, for instance. So I might not trust their code at all, because, dude, it doesn't look like you know what you're doing. But if I see a long script that is written well, and they've got stuff grouped together into functions and stuff and all of this, and they're declaring they're initializing their variables properly. They're using error handling, using try catch finally, and instead of just relying on throw or something, for instance, then I may very well begin to I'll trust that code, because it looks like it was written by a professional. It looks like it was written by somebody that knows what they're doing. And now that, on the other hand, I will tell you this, Matt, if you're the one that asked the question, I know you typed it. There have been times when I will, if I'm doing a one-liner, so I may so I may create an object, put parentheses around it, access a property. That property contains another object, so I'll put parentheses around all of that, put another dot, access it, and I may group some stuff that then in a one-liner, that it will be very short, but it actually wounds up, being like 3 or 4 objects that were created all on that single line to get to the one that I needed. In a script, I might break that out into 4 or 5 lines of code. So I create the object, store it in a variable, create another, access the object from the property of that object, and then store that in a variable, and so forth and so on. And I do that because it makes it easier to read and to understand the code. When you're automating Office, that's often the case. So you get a documents collection in Word, then you have to use the item property to select a specific item from that collection that returns a document. Then at that point, then you can access a region, and then region collection. Then from there, you use the region collection, you get the item to get a specific region. That's, I don't know, 4 or 5 objects right there that I mentioned. You can actually do that in a single line, but the code is very hard to read. So there may be times when I'll break things out and make them longer than necessary, but it is for a readability perspective. Okay, so closing that particular thing up, then you should always use native PowerShell code as long as as long as it meets your needs. The other thing, using PowerShell is cool. Yeah, it's fun, and it makes complicated things pretty easy. Yeah, I know that's not necessarily a compelling reason, but yeah, it is. So the last slide that I just put up is showing the resources. We've got the Scripted Guy blog. There's a Learn PowerShell page. That's actually part of the TechNet Script Center. I've got my PowerShell 3 step-by-step book. I've got a PowerShell 4 best practices book. There's a script repository, the PowerShell.org. I should also mention the PowerShell magazine. That's a good resource as well, and you'll be seeing some more stuff on that coming out pretty soon too. So, are there any more questions from anybody? Does not appear that there are any additional questions. Yeah, Scripted Mom said, dude, did you put them asleep? Tried not to put everybody to sleep. They're laughing now. Okay, well, in that case then, I'm going to stop my presentation over here, and I'm going to hand the handset over to a brand new PowerShell MVP, aka Teresa, the scripting wife. Okay, so I am handing the headset over to her.
Okay, we'll try to work out how we can handle this from within our room. We've got multiple mics here, and there's echo going on. Yeah, there it is. Hold on one second. How's that?
Still.
It is echoing a little bit. I can move towards the back of the room, see if it quiets down. How about that? No. It's kind of weird, isn't it? Yeah.
Hello? Hey, Matt, how are you? Oh, Eric, I didn't know I could talk with you, too. Oh, okay. Oh, it'll break. No, not now. I slept all day yesterday. Did you have a good conference? Thank you. Uh-oh, lost one.
Hey guys,
Hello.
hopefully you can hear me now without an echo.
Yes, no echo here.
I can't hear you now.
Okay, I cannot hear any echo
Excellent.
except my own voice.
Okay, I've had to change room. So yeah, I've been exiled into another room. So I'm in here, and everyone else is next door to us. So where they have some questions, someone will type it into the chat, and then we can kind of carry on from there, I think.
Okay.
Okay, so Ed, thank you very much for that presentation. It was actually really good. Thanks a lot.
He can't hear you.
He can't hear me.
Right, I have the headset on, so he can't hear anything.
I'll let him know later on then. So, Teresa, thank you very much for coming. I saw on Twitter that this is the only interview you've ever done. Surely that's not true.
No, since I've become an MVP.
Oh, right, okay.
One night playing around on the podcast, Housewife and I were the guests one night.
Oh, yeah, I heard Housewife on, was it towards the end of last year? I wasn't sure whether that was...
It was episode 187, but I really don't remember the time frame on it. Of course, she could have been on other times when I wasn't there, but...
Okay. And they're now up to episode 300 and something like that. Okay. So I wanted to have you on to have a little chat about your recent award of MVP and your community contributions.
Well, it was quite an honor to be awarded the MVP, and it's just humbling to be awarded that. I just do what I do to help out. It's the way I was raised, and just to me, the way you're supposed to do things is help each other out.
Yeah, sure. So was that ever your goal to become a MVP, or did it just kind of happen for you?
Well, it just kind of happened for me because it certainly was never a goal. That really rubs me the wrong way when I hear people say, well, I'm going to do this so I can become an MVP. That just really goes against my nature and gets under my skin, so to speak, because that's not the reason to do things. You do things to help each other because somewhere along the line someone has helped you. No one knows everything, and that's just not the way the world should be.
Yeah. I've been involved in this particular community over maybe the last 4 years, and pretty much that whole time I've kind of heard your name and all the work you've done. What is the motivation for you to put in as much time into community contribution as you do?
Part of it is it's opportunity for one thing, but Ed is a quite popular speaker without sounding bragging on him or anything. There's several opportunities. He went through some health issues with his ear through scuba diving incidents, so there for a while he had some surgeries on his ear, and that gave him vertigo. So I would when he would go to local events, I would go with him because I could drive and he didn't have to worry about driving. And I've been fortunate enough that we haven't needed my income to survive. So for the last 6 years, I haven't held an outside job, which puts me, taking care of the house, mowing the lawn, and doing errands and things. So it gives me some free time to go with him or become involved in things. If you don't know, my background is in accounting work. So, I'm kind of organized, and I like for things to, it's not that I'm so rigid that I can't change plans, but I like for there to be a plan. So it kind of just started out that I was able to drive and take him places, and therefore I was at the events and saw just different opportunities to help out. And I'm certainly not a scripter. I will never be a scripter. I don't have any reason to be a scripter. But I saw there for 1 year, when the first year Ed used me as a student or as a beginner in the scripting games, he was just talking out loud because he works for about one of the scenarios for scripting games, and I don't remember what the event was, but anyway, he's talking about instantiate or something, and I'm like, are you sure that's a beginner thing? And it made him step back and rethink it and say, well, maybe it wasn't the way he presented it, or maybe it was medium, not a beginner. So let me think. So then he just immediately said, well, you can be in the scripting games. And he got on my Twitter account, or got on the Twitter and said, oh, scripting wife's going to be in the scripting games. So then it got to be pretty bad, because it's like, okay, who's going to teach me to script in time for the scripting games? So we sat down and we just did some tutorials, and he wrote them up, or we wrote them up as blog posts, and they became a fun thing, and just kind of went from there. But of course, as soon as the games were over, I forgot what I learned, because the next year I needed to be a beginner again in order to be an example.
Yeah.
And I think I got sidetracked and didn't complete the thought on that. But yeah, that was just how it got started, with me going with him to like Sequel Saturdays and different things like that around here, and then going to Tech Ed and working at the booth. It was, I could entertain people while he was answering another question. Somebody came up to the booth and said, hey, I'm having trouble with this script. Then Ed could help them with the script. Well, if two other people came up at the same time while they were waiting their turn, you just don't want them to stand around there and get bored and walk away and not get their question answered. So I would talk with them and find out toward user groups, because the first year that we talked about user groups at Tech Ed, there were only like 7 or 9, I forget the exact number now, but there were so few that I could just immediately name off every user group and who the leader was in the country. And now I think we're close to 50 or 40 something. So
Wow.
Gotten involved
Pretty
in
big now
helping
then, isn't it?
get user groups started.
So yeah, you're not, I guess, a natural techie or kind of a IT geek, but you have kind of come up with a lot of ways over the last couple of years to contribute a lot into community. You've mentioned already that that you learned PowerShell as a beginner, and you've contributed into the games. You're not a presenter either, so in what other ways are you contributing into the community?
Well, I mentioned I do attend Tech Ed with Ed. The only compensation, if you want to call it that, is I do not pay for a pass to go to Tech Ed. That's part of the scripting guys booth. They give you a pass for staff for the booth. But all the expense of going and the travel and all that, that's on me. So, I want to make sure everyone knows I'm not being paid to do anything. So I contribute that way. I, like I said, have helped start several user groups and continue to work with them. This week at the summit, I talked with 3 different groups of people. So we should have 3 more groups getting started. Talked to 2 different people about transferring ownership because the person that was the leader in one city had moved to another city. And I found someone that would take it over in the original city. So we get that one going again, and have interest in another city where it seems to kind of gone dormant, and I'm working on getting that one revised. So worked with the user groups. When we started the one here in Charlotte, Jim Christopher, who's an MVP, is local. He's our leader, and I'm his assistant. I do all the things like filling out any forms for things like GitGA and INETA and the O'Reilly user group, whatever they call it. You go to O'Reilly, and there's a user group thing where you can join.
Yeah.
And so obviously I'm not a presenter. I don't have this all prepared out. I just talk off the top of my head when I'm asked a question. The Power Scripting podcast, about 3-4 years ago, for 2 or 3 weeks they didn't have a guest, and John and Howard just like, well, we forgot to get a guest. So I asked them, did they need any help with that? I would be glad to help them because I do have the organizational skills. I said, you just tell me who you'd like as a guest and I'll get it lined up. So I've been doing all their scheduling of guests at least 3 years, if not 4. And what else do I do? Oh, we have PowerShell Saturdays. Ed and I kind of talked Columbus, Ohio, the group up there, the PowerShell group up there, into hosting the first one. And then we did drive up there and help them have that one. Then we've had 2 here in Charlotte, and there were 2 in Atlanta that have been involved in. I did all the registrations and getting the food, make sure we had food for everyone and drinks, and just kind of hang around out front to make sure if anybody needs anything, there's a body, even after they've already been registered, to go to. Did the same thing for the PowerShell Summit, registration and hanging out just to point people in the right direction. I'm also the bookkeeper or treasurer for PowerShell.org. And yeah, and then next year we'll do in the PowerShell Summit here in Charlotte. So I'll be pretty involved with that.
Wow. So that is a heck of a lot of work, isn't it?
Well, I don't mind. It doesn't seem like work to me. It's fun. I love people. I love helping out. And as far as the accounting work, that's a piece of cake. I mean, I can do a spreadsheet in the same time you can write 100 lines of script. You know, it's that's no
Totally
problem
true.
at all.
So then, amongst all of that, all of the community contribution you put in, I mean, what would you call out as the most rewarding part of that?
Probably the times when I'm at an event or at Tech Ed or somewhere, and someone walks up to me and just flat out says, "You're the scripting wife. Thank you so much for the blog articles where you go back to the basics," and I've learned from that. You know, if what I've written and Ed's helped me write has helped someone get a grasp on PowerShell and not be afraid to use it.
That's cool. Yeah. I guess one of the one of the main challenges I have in trying to kind of encourage people into contributing into community is that they sort of believe that they need to know everything there is to know about their particular technology, and they need to be a really good presenter, and I guess you've kind of proved that there are a lot of ways in which you can contribute without having to kind of get up and to present.
Absolutely. We have we have a good case scenario here in Charlotte. A good friend of ours, 2 years ago, he was pretty nervous about presenting, and at one of our user group meetings, we called it Script Club. So someone had brought in a script that was pretty advanced that Jim and Ed wound up working with this guy on, and then everybody else at the meeting that night were beginners. Some of them had never even tried to script before. They just were at the very beginning stages. And this young man, we encouraged him to just work with these new people and show them, because he was a medium user. He wasn't a brand new user, but he wasn't really advanced. And we just told him, said, well, you know, you've got kids, you know how it is to teach and show them something that pretty much every admin would need to do, and just work them through it while Jim and Ed were helping this other guy with this advanced script. And he did. You could tell he was nervous, but he did, and he did a wonderful job, because, you know, I'm sitting there listening. And it was just like he started at the beginning, showed him how to do it, and now he recently started working for Microsoft as a premier field engineer. And he actually made a presentation at the summit. And I'm just, you know, in 2 years' time, he's come that far. So today you might not be an excellent presenter or an expert, but it's baby steps. Start out in your user group or a fellow coworker and show them how to do one thing. And as you grow and learn more about being a presenter or a teacher, which to me it's all the same thing. You're a teacher and a presenter, or you're a presenter and a teacher.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the better you get at it, the more comfortable you are. And next thing you know, it's a piece of cake to you as well.
Yeah. Every time people get up and kind of present, it is a opportunity to learn and to improve, and we don't need to be good today, as long as we're kind of taking the opportunity to kind of improve. And I think people kind of they'll look at people like Ed or Don and go, near that I couldn't get up and kind of talk to people. What advice would you have to kind of encourage people over that initial hump?
In addition to, like I said, just showing a coworker or maybe someone in a user group, the other way to contribute is there are so many people out there that are just beginning and have questions and so on. I heard someone at the summit say the other day that one way he has learned quite a bit has just been by going through the forums and answering questions. And someone called him out one day, said, well, all you're doing is going to the internet and doing a search and finding the answer and then posting it. Well, that's what the internet is for, and that's the reason for sharing code, is for people to use. So and he said, but I learned so much because there's a question there on the forum, and I go and research it and find the answer. I've learned this myself, as well as providing the answer in the forum. Because to be honest, not everyone has a knack for being able to search the internet. You don't know the words to search for. You don't know the different ways to phrase things. And until you get that knack to know how to search for something, especially when you're looking for code, you can search for days and not find the right answer. So I really encourage you to go to the forums. You can either go to the PowerShell.org forum or go to the Scripting Guys forum. There's tons and tons of questions out there. And don't be afraid to answer. And at first, if you're not comfortable answering on the forum itself, at least take the time to look up the answers and learn the material yourself. And then pretty soon you're going to say, oh, yeah, I know how to do that. And then you'll be answering the questions as well. And that's a really good way to do that. Not everyone is a writer either. I'm a terrible writer. You can tell by my emails I'm a horrible writer. I say what I think and I write it down, and it's just, I'm not doing all the flowery words. I don't worry about punctuation. I just get my thought down on paper before I forget, or it all gets jumbled up. So there are lots of places to blog. You can create your own blog. I don't keep up with, because like I said, I hate to blog or write, but WordPress has free ones that you can just go out there and blog about a problem you had or a situation where you solved it with a script. Write it down. And someone else will find it. It'll come back to benefit you someday whenever someone helps you.
Okay, thanks. And I guess the last question that I have for you is really around the MVP award, and there's a large number of people out there in the communities who are kind of contributing to with the kind of ultimate aim of becoming an MVP. Do you think that ever needs to be your kind of ultimate goal, or would you get enough kind of return out of just community contribution without being awarded? What are your thoughts around that?
Oh, well, personally, like I said in the beginning, that really gets under my skin for someone to just flat out say that they're only doing this to become an MVP. That is just the um, wrong attitude to have, and it really gets under my skin. Now, it might not bother other people as much as it does me, but if you're only doing something to get rewarded for it or recognized for it, that's just not the right attitude to have. You know, you're not a true MVP in my mind when you set out to do a task just so you can say, well, I did this, now I get to become an MVP.
Yeah.
And and then people that get mad because they don't get awarded, and that's just wrong.
Yeah, I know. Particularly in the US, there are more kind of community contributors than there are MVP awards to go around.
Mm-hmm.
And I know over there, it is pretty hard to get, but there are a number of people there who do a huge amount in the community as well. So it's pretty good.
Yes, like I said, I was very honored and very humbled by it. It's just probably the highlight, and at the same time, it certainly wasn't my goal.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So that's about all the questions I have. I wanted to open it out to the room and to people online. Does anyone have a particular question for Teresa that they wanted to ask her directly? It can be about community, about MVP, about pretty much anything you like. As long as it's not too personal or kind of intrusive, I guess. Eric's typing there. So, yeah. What would be the possibility of having an Asia PowerShell Summit? I know there's one happening in Europe later this year, but no one's mentioned one in Asia. Teresa, is that perhaps?
I don't know about the legalities and country code business, of doing things internationally. I really am not involved in that part as far as the European Summit's concerned. I just don't know anything about doing business internationally, so I have no idea. That'd be a question for Don or Jason Helmy, because I really don't know, and I'd be afraid to say.
Okay. I'm sure we'll ask it anyway.
Because I'm not afraid to tell you I don't know, but I usually can tell you who to go ask.
Yeah. Any other questions in the chat?
I won't bite.
No questions in the room. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I want to say thank you very much to both you and Ed for taking the time out tonight to talk to us. I know out here it is very, very much appreciated. So thank you very much.
Well, it's certainly our pleasure, and anytime we can be of service, just let us know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so if that's it for Teresa as well, then I guess that's today's link meeting over. I just want to end by mentioning that we are having a PowerShell Saturday on the 24th of May. The emails for that should come out over this weekend, so they should be with you at the latest of early on Monday morning. And there will be links up online to register for that. And we should be planning to run another one of these meetings in about a month. So I'm looking to target the first weekend of June for that. And the presenter for that, actually, I won't announce him now because I need to make sure he's okay. But I do have a really good presenters potentially lined up for next month and for July already as well. So really looking forward to that. So I guess that's it. So thank you again to people who kind of dialed in and who joined online, particularly to those who got up and actually came in here today. And I guess we will meet again in a month. Thank you all.